Hello, people of the internet. My name is JD Shadow. By now, you have probably heard about the YouTube Coppa crisis and have probably seen several videos concerning the controversy and the impact that it will have on everyone and everything on YouTube. And there have also been people who have tried to say that it won't have as much of an impact as you might think. Though one can wonder how they know for certain about that when the main issue about what has been put forth is exactly why we cannot be certain that those people are in any way knowledgeable about what is to come. Now, for those who are not in the know yet, allow me to provide some of the most concise explanations I possibly can, though those that know me have watched my videos will know that it's sometimes hard for me to do so. Earlier in 2019, the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, found that YouTube violated what is called the Children Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA or Coppa. You can pronounce it either way. I'm going to go by Coppa for this particular video. Coppa, put into law in 1998, prevents websites from being legally allowed to collect personal information of children using their site without their parents' express written consent and constant monitor of how that data is used. It was amended in 2013 to include the cookie systems, which YouTube had been put under scrutiny for using. This is after a kids-only site in 1998 was found to be deceiving in how they collected information. The kidscom.com controversy that sparked an FTC investigation that led to Coppa being drafted in the first place. This in turn made a lot of websites to not have to live with the pain of having to go through all that hoopla of having to get parental consent. Just disallow children 12 or under, which is what the law considers as too young to be collecting data from without consent, from using that site at all. Keep in mind that the law does not go that far. It does not make that completely concrete, but it only makes it very tedious for a site to have to worry about keeping records about consent. It's easier to disallow usage of the service than to go through that legal red tape. I implore you though to stick a pin in that point, since we'll be coming back around to that, since that is a very important part of this whole story. It is also important to note that Coppa has since been under constant controversy and criticism throughout the years. Many online companies have complained about this opening up the possibility of age fraud, where someone could just lie about their age and they would get complete access to the site without anybody even knowing that they were under 13 years of age. This is impossible to prevent, because to do so would mean needing to know things that normal privacy laws prevent companies from being able to obtain, like your ID, for instance. There have been other issues throughout the years, from how long it takes to obtain parental consent to parents actually helping children lie about their age, this has happened before, to it not ensuring a kid's safety online and not preventing predatory advertising or something even worse. It was also drafted well before the age of social media, which many consider YouTube to fall into, which is very interesting, as it is YouTube that is the focal point of this whole situation. The FTC found that YouTube violated Coppa due to children under 13 using the site, and Google, the parent company of YouTube, collecting the data from the videos that those children viewed. In the past, YouTube Kids was available that allowed children to access videos that were deemed appropriate for them without the hassle of what we're currently seeing. This is how the now infamous Baby Shark song became one of the most viewed videos in history. Of course, this falls into what was said before, the idea that parents would let kids lie about their age to get onto the site and to make content. Though YouTube makes it clear on their site that they prohibit anyone under 13 from creating an account, there is just so much you can do to enforce that kind of rule from where they are at, and the difficulties previously expressed only compound this issue. Furthering YouTube's struggle is their admission that kids make up a lot of YouTube's audience. In several instances during the investigation and the examination, YouTube shocked us all and made us all facepalm in telling the FTC that kids are in fact using the YouTube site. Now, that didn't mean they said that they intended to collect data from them, but that's how the YouTube site is run to get the recommendation and what personalized ads to run. And stick a pin in that term as well, we'll come back to that. The FTC, to the surprise of no one following that show, and people telling YouTube all you have to do is to shut up, you had things in the bag, and here you go bragging that kids were using your site and you were collecting data, but more on that later as well, deemed that YouTube violated Coppa and had forced it to, along with YouTube settling for $170 million, a milestone settlement in Coppa's history, made sure that nothing that could attract children to videos would be allowed to have personalized ads, or ads targeting the person that is watching the content based on what they have watched before, and what information that was collected could be ran. It is important to note that the director of the Bureau of Consumer Protection, Andrew Smith, and yes, we're going to come back to him, has had conflicts of interest which bar him from discussing or making decisions about up to 120 different companies. However, it's also important to note that the organization that supplied the letter to recluse himself from Coppa rulings was one that was seemingly in favor of this ruling, and it's unclear as to if the undersigned of the letter were aware of the ramifications were going to be put in place, or if that was the intended consequence that they had in mind. Nor is it apparent that the letter pushed this decision along. If any of the latter two are correct, then this is even a worse crisis than before, given how some people view YouTube's perceived political stance of allowing more right-wing commentators to have free reign over whatever they post, even though progressive shows like David Pakman's Secular Talk and the Young Turks exist on the platform without consequence, and while other figures like Mike Jarbo or Joe Rogan are constantly lumped into the same boat as those that are more on the right-wing fringe and will say whatever without consequence. Time and time again, we have seen that neo-authoritarians from the left and right wings of the political spectrum play tug of war with YouTube, being the rope as to what type of speech should and shouldn't be allowed on the platform. This battle has been well documented over the last few years, and keep in mind that the problems about the rulings are those that transcend any form of politics, as right-wing, left-wing, progressive, conservative, liberal, and everywhere in between loses in this ruling. Anyone who is trying to use this as a political wedge, or is saying that you must agree with this ruling to still be considered progressive or Democrat, or to disagree with this in any way is akin to you being any sort of label like alt-right or neo-Nazi that gets thrown around as an opportunistic dilettante. This should not be a political wedge issue, and I implore anyone who is watching this to not use this as such, as we cannot become divisive when talking about the ramifications or the impact this will have. Though Coppa should be used to protect children from predatory actions by businesses, the problem lies in who is being blamed, what they think is the solution, what they believe was the problem, and what they are trying to do about it. Because solution is what you might have seen if you have uploaded anything to YouTube within the past month or so. You might have noticed a choice come up with a quote saying, regardless of your location, you are legally required to comply with the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act or Coppa, and or other laws. You're required to tell us whether your videos are made for kids. You're then forced to make one or two choices with a radio button selection. Either yes, it's made for kids, or no, it's not made for kids. This, in and of itself, leaves itself very vague and open for interpretation. Even without the link that really puts everything into utter confusion, it makes you wonder if YouTube or the FTC even believes an in-between even exists. Though an in-between does exist, and we'll get to that later on because YouTube seemingly left that important part out in these decisions. What is that in-between? A general audience option that, while some of the content could be acceptable for kids and parents would have no problems allowing their kids to watch a video, the content is seemingly aimed for an older demographic that would understand the added value of what is being discussed and the added value that an older person would be able to provide in actually finding something that a child would be interested in as well and enjoyable for them. Now keep in mind, we're not talking about the Logan Pauls or the Daddy of Fives of the world. This has nothing to do with those particular videos. Though while the Ryan Toys reviews are seen as not being a part of this whole ruling, I don't doubt that that was probably in the back of the FTC's mind when it came up with this type of ruling and when this was all going down to begin with. Because if you click on that provided link, you will find the very reason why everyone is extremely and rightfully so paranoid. Because in pure YouTube fashion, they provide explanations that try to make everything make sense, not only fail to answer the existing questions, but make us expand on them and ask new questions on top of them. because according to YouTube and the FTC, it seems a video is made for kids if any of these following things exist. Subject matter of the video, as in educational content for preschoolers, whether children are your intended or actual audience for the video, whether the video includes child actors or models, whether the language of the video is intended for children to understand, whether the video includes activities that appeal to children such as play acting, simple songs or games or early education, whether the video includes songs, stories, or poems for children, and a big one, any other information you may have to help determine your video's audience, like empirical evidence of the video's audience. Now, while a few of the bullet points do make sense, and we'll get to the last one here in just a second, it's the one that I skipped over. You may have noticed I skipped over one of those that has grasped the most attention when it pertains to a lot of the things that people are worried about. It is this one. Whether the video includes characters, celebrities, or toys that appeal to children, including animated characters or cartoon figures. Though others might be giving some people pause and needing further interpretation, as in the last one that we discussed, the empirical evidence of the video's audience, how can one be able to stop anybody from viewing their content if it's for general audiences? It's the one of whether a video includes characters, celebrities, or toys that appeal to children that is worrying a lot of people, such as those that review anime and cartoon shows that can appeal to kids, though it's aimed at a slightly older demographic, video games that are rated E for everyone that have a wider range of players from all types of ages, such as Minecraft and Fortnite, and collectible channels such as toys and figurine collectibles. This is a reasonable thing to consider given the wide audience that these types of games, shows, movies, and figurines can attract. Though a show, game, or collectible can be considered as appropriate for kids, the person making the video might use colorful language that is not family friendly, or though they might not use that sort of language, their discussion of the material being discussed are of such that a child might not be expected to easily understand. Though I don't discredit how smart some kids are at that age anymore, don't take them for granted. For instance, I currently run a Miraculous Ladybug reaction video series where I react and review to a show that's rated TV Y7FV, meaning that a ratings board determined that the show is appropriate for audiences age 7 and up because the show contains fantasy superhero style violence. In this sense, kids would be fine to watch the show as many do. As such, they might seek out others online who might share the same interests. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that adults are barred from watching the show. In fact, those of an older generation might see value in the show that younger children might now. While they are seeing a cool superhero fighting their arch nemesis, that older person might be taking in animation styles, might be picking up a subtle jokes that could fly over a kid's head, but an adult will understand, or they might laugh at it for entirely different reasons, and might akin it to a Marvel or DC show like Batman or anything for the current Marvel Cinematic Universe. As such, an adult could make a YouTube video to discuss where the storyline will go from there in a manner of speaking that other adults can understand. But if a child were to access it, they might not understand what the adult was discussing about the show. Though again, don't take kids' intelligence for granted, but they might not be scarred for life because they aren't dropping F or S bombs in the video everywhere. For example, someone who is a devout Christian I know is a well-known fan of the show and of my reactions, and she highly enjoys what I have to say about the show and the discussions I bring. She is not one to scold about profanity, even when she doesn't use it herself, and she isn't one to scold for mild innuendos. Do you want a further example of this? How about Doug Walker's Adventure Time vlogs, where him and Rob Walker, Channel Awesome, discussed the show whenever a new episode came out. Yes, Adventure Time was by classification and rating considered a kid-friendly show. However, has anyone watched anything from Doug or Nostalgia Critic or Channel Awesome? Yeah, they know that their takes might not be kid-friendly. How about Japanese anime, or about primetime shows like The Simpsons, Family Guy, or South Park? Obviously, these are not made for kids, and in the case of South Park, that's clearly obvious, even though Family Guy and Simpsons might still be watched by kids. But that does not mean kids have never heard about these shows or have seen them as one of those shows you would rebel against your parents by sneaking in your bedroom and watch. At least that's before parental controls came thing. These might fall into that category because of that, these general audience things where kids might still know about these shows and still might go seek people who like those shows as well. That doesn't necessarily mean that the content creators should be punished for that. How do they know? How can they control that? Video games, to some who are still living in the 1980s, are considered kids' toys still, and thus might apply as well to someone who is a baby boomer who doesn't understand and doesn't care to understand the whole concept of how video games have evolved throughout the years. Fortnite videos get a ton of views from a lot of age groups. PewDiePie, who got a lot of controversy aimed at him unnecessarily and unfairly, I might add, still gets considerable amount of views for his recent Minecraft addiction. Other games might be enjoyed by kids, though it was never the target demographic, where they could be the target demo, but the game got so much widespread appeal that it attracted other age groups that found their own enjoyment in that, and thus they want to share why they enjoyed it and what they thought of it. Should they be punished as well? Should they be said, hey, you are aiming at this for kids? Should they be just assumed that they were aiming that at kids? How do you know? How do they know? How would they be able to control their audience as well? How were they able to say, hey, you're not allowed to watch this video just because you're under 13? Who makes that decision? And toys and figurines are among some of the most sought after collectibles on the market. LEGO channels are thought of to be hit by the recent ruling the most, but they have been those that have been collected these rare figurines and toys for their nostalgic value, as well as monetary value. Anyone who has watched the PBS show Antiques Roadshow might tell you their amazement of how much something so simple can be appraised for because of how sought after something is, how rare it is, what condition your copy is in, how out of circulation a certain toy or doll game board is. There have been times where collector cards and toys have been appraised for over $1,000 or auctioned for $500,000. There's clearly an audience for those types of videos and those videos that I've outlined before. Should they be forced to try to control their audience? Say, if you're under 13, you're not allowed to watch my videos. Again, who makes that decision? Who is there to make that ruling? How are we able to control that kind of audience? We cannot be expected to know when a kid is watching those videos or when that type of audience is coming into our videos. We don't control that. We can only say that this is intended for a certain type of crowd. Doesn't necessarily mean that kids are never allowed to watch those videos. The problem is what could happen if and when a new bot system is put in place to spot incorrectly identified quote-unquote kid-targeted YouTube videos in January of 2020. Aside from how well YouTube bots work, just as anyone who has been hit by demonetization, copyright, or has been hit with this weird delisting that people have reported YouTube doing to those who have scared people will use to vilify them politically of how well they work. We also have the one thing that I think one could get from hearing of those examples. There is no room for nuance or shades of meaning. It's either you are squeaky clean and you are intended the video to be viewed by little children, or the video should have been uploaded to Pornhub instead. There's really no in-between given for the creator to choose. Just because a show, book, game, or whatever is intended for a kid's audience doesn't mean that it cannot have appeal to a larger range of age groups, and nothing is barring them from using YouTube as a platform to communicate their enjoyment of that media with others of a like age. Should they be punished because they like something that a kid might enjoy? Likewise, that doesn't mean that the video they produce would not be able to be consumed by a child, nor would a child find enjoyment in the person discussing that piece of media. The content creator cannot control who watches beyond reason, and as such, they shouldn't be expected to have complete knowledge of their audience or control over it. It shouldn't be forced to make an all or nothing decision when a more general audience approach would be more appropriate. Likewise, a kid might find more appeal in something that was deemed acceptable for teens simply because of lenient parents, or as I mentioned before, parents are allowing children to lie about their age to get access to these platforms proper. Should another one of YouTube's half-brained bots decide that something that, by a lack of clarity or nuance-filled guidelines, deemed to be incorrectly labeled, it will go and change the label, making the personalized ads go away regardless of the intended audience. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, as a laundry list of other penalties happen to your video that severely limits it to the point where it basically just gets paralyzed. Because according to the FTC and some trolls and those that are not clearly understanding the dangers here, yes, some of the French gaming forum reset era, there's that platform again rearing its ugly head, tried to defend all of this the best it could. But this was too vague yet draconian that even some there couldn't defend it, and when they can't defend it, you know there's a problem. Content creators and YouTube had this coming. They were maliciously targeting children for years, either with the ads or with the so-called gateway drugs to political indoctrination. And it gets even worse still. Not just because the issues that were already addressed, and not just because YouTube did not provide clear explanations to those guidelines and how YouTube threw the creators under the bus and then telling us that they cannot provide any legal input whatsoever into what videos are safe and which are not. Think of how they handled the copyright issues and how much we battle daily concerning those right now as we speak here today, but how hard the FTC is seemingly wanting to come for the content creators. There have been clear indications the FTC is waiting, prying, stalking, and just hoping and daring that anyone screws up and does the wrong thing. Make no mistake, the little guy is going to get sniped here because they do one wrong thing, and the penalties are life-altering and scary. $42,000 per video. Think about that. Who has that kind of money to just shell out for every single time someone does something wrong? And from the language that the FTC provided, it's clear to see that the FTC believes that we are all criminals too. As if we are the stereotypical villain twirling our little mustaches to cleverly put out a video and peddle it to kids as if it was some candy store ran by a creepy person wanting to have a good time later with them. That is a crude analogy, but if you watch the press conference by people who clearly don't understand this platform and to a bigger degree don't seem to care about learning about this platform and think they're the sheriffs going to tame the Wild West, that's how they are going to treat us. They will be aiming from the rooftops with their proverbial guns, just awaiting for the first sign of a slip up. And this is not a paranoid driven statement either. The shoot fish in a barrel analogy was the worst analogy that one can give, and someone who clearly should have never been a part of this case, that has conflicts of interest all over the place, and who might have gotten influenced by those who also never cared to even look at any nuance, and how politically driven this could have been, and how much we are now the political football for something that should never have been a bipartisan wedge issue, which people can now say that you can't be progressive and still be against this kind of draconian shoot first and ask questions later, guilty until proven guilty approach at this ascending is the one driving the bus that YouTube threw us under, and he's saying that he's going to back up the bus that we were thrown under and make sure that we were run over and we are dead. That is what YouTube did with how they are not only handling this and the settlement instead of taking responsibility for their mess up, and that is how the FTC is intending to go. That's not me fear-mongering or trying to dress up things that scare you. That is how it's being worded. And the FTC is saying, don't worry, we aren't going to be that draconian later on, and their statements are contradicted by Andrew Smith's way of wording this. This is a guy that has no business being in this conversation or even in the same room as anyone who is even associated with this conversation. He's somebody that is easily swayed, and for all we know, YouTube and Google are probably two companies that his interests, his donors, are asking him to take down any means necessary because they go against their bottom dollar. He did say that YouTube would be a wasteland of crap if this went into effect. We know full well what his intentions are here. He wants to show whoever it is signing his check that he is going full bore about this, and we are going to be the ones holding the bag. Shame on him, and shame on anyone who approves this kind of attack on content creators, because it is clear that the FTC thinks that we are the villains in this story as well. And it does seem like it's driven for profit as well. Remember that the monetization situation many channels have gone through would not be appropriate enough? We've seen people saying that they could make a video not as family friendly to counteract the possibility of being labeled for kids. But remember that doing that can run into the opposite problem that YouTube made because they were too lazy to counter the media's constant framing of people like PewDiePie, who also stands to be affected by these current rules. The media, who by the way never asked any questions of Mr. Smith if he's being too black and white with his framing of YouTube content creators, what children choose to view, yes, their priorities lie in a certain place as well, made YouTube out to be some sort of safe haven for hate speech and propaganda, and then put people like Joe Rogan and Matt Jarbo in with people who would drop N-bombs in their videos purposely and without care. But YouTube can, but has yet to, give you an easy way out. As I said before, the FTC's own Coppa rulings, Title 16 Code of Federal Regulations, Section 312.2, and the link below to the actual language of this part of the law, also give a general mixed audience option that YouTube can actually give us right now as we speak. And that is what we were talking about earlier. Coppa would not be triggered if this mixed audience option was put into place, according to the FTC's own FAQ about this particular issue. However, YouTube has seemingly hid this from us because it would cost too much money and time to add that option. But here's the thing, YouTube does have a sort of rating system in place. It's not the same as a TV rating system, but it has a similar act of describing what is in the video, why a particular video might not be for kids, or what it might contain, either nudity or maybe language, strong language, or violence, or even an F for flashing lights. If a video contains strobe lighting that might cause headaches or seizures, you would put that particular rating on there, something we don't usually see in TV shows or that being told. And that would really help specifically some particular videos that now have to use warnings whenever those particular strobe lighting effects are in effect in those videos, because we have seen those pop up recently. We have seen that people have to use half their descriptor in order to tell people, hey, don't click on this if you are prone to photosensitivity. That would help a lot, because that would be a lawsuit and a half waiting to happen, or maybe even worse for somebody who might unexpectedly click on it or are not being warned beforehand. But this is only for paid content and not for unpaid content, and we don't understand why. Why is this not a thing for YouTube to use? Make this available to everybody and you will no doubtly alleviate half of the issues that you're having right now. Give us a full-on rating system. Give us this sort of rating system, or make it so we can all rate like PG or teen rated or mature. Why is that such a hard thing for us to be able to do? Why not just make this available to everybody? Why does this only for paid content? Why is this hid behind if we hide things behind a paywall? I don't understand that side of it. All of this, however, could actually be moot because of one glaring flaw in the logic behind how everything went down in the case to begin with that I don't think many people are talking about in these other videos, and I want to add this into the discussion. What did we discuss earlier? The parental consent beforehand. Parents should be the final say about what children see. Now, I know we can have that discussion about how strict some parents are, and that's a very worthwhile discussion. I think some parents can be extremely too strict, and that needs to have that discussion. But parents should be able to monitor their children's activities both on and offline, and they need to be able to make their own decisions. And they did by saying that their kid was over 13 years of age due to the rules of YouTube. They are allowing their kid to use the platform, and as such, they're telling the system that it's okay to collect the data. Snail mail is not needed to provide consent anymore, or shouldn't be, but we'll get to that in a second. But as such, despite the amendment to add cookies to the list of things websites needed consent for before collecting data of 12 and unders, Coppa can also be viewed, get this, as obsolete. Perhaps as obsolete as the current copyright laws have never caught up with the current age of digital media and how it operates. It's still in the age of 1998. And has never factored in how parents can essentially say it's okay, it's my computer the kid is using, or I'm watching with my kid, whatever other example you can use here. The bottom line is that once the parent is signing the child up for them, you're essentially giving permission. The definitions of what to consider proper parental consent is completely out of date right now. The 13 or over rule is not a set in stone rule and doesn't necessarily have to be applied. It is just something that websites put into place in order to not have to worry about getting that whole consent thing going. And the age of 13 is only when you don't need parental consent in order to get data from that person. This makes what YouTube actually said to the FTC make sense in a way, as it too did not factor in this nuanced approach. If a parent or guardian makes that decision, case closed, go home, game over. The permission has been given. And besides, I believe that if a parent had a choice of whether or not a kid should watch a personalized ad after YouTube collects the data from the kid, or have an ad that is not directed at anybody in particular, and the ad features something that is not appropriate for a kid to generally see, I think the parent will select the former. I believe that they will more or less give permission for YouTube in order to collect data in order to make sure that the ads the kid is watching is appropriate for them rather than take their chances. So this also strips the parent from making that decision anyway, which means YouTube should have never settled in the first place, because despite all their bragging that they might have been better off not doing if they were going to either get credibility to their rule of no one under 13 used the site, or show that digital signatures were as good as hard copy signatures for permission, they still had a case. And if they would have stuck to their guns, we would have had a completely different discussion now. That would have set up a brand new debate that we should be having right now about the current state of the Coppa ruling and how it's so out of date that it needs to be updated. We were seeing the Coppa rule be updated right now if YouTube is stuck to their guns, but they didn't do that. Instead, we are left with this problem. A problem that I want to put a real world hard example to what this could do to somebody. And she can explain her situation better than I ever could because it's her experience, and I would hope that she makes a video about this, explaining it from her side, from her own words. But she has given me permission to talk about this in this video, and so I will take advantage of this. As you know, one of my good friends is Luna TK, a member of the Nocturnal Network. She also creates miraculous reactions and chooses to be family friendly with her content. She is not going to change her content in any sort of way because of this ruling. And she clearly falls under the mixed category that we've described earlier. But there's one other thing about her. She is also expecting and has had her baby shower as recently as November. She will have to go on maternity leave soon from her day job. And as any woman who has expected before can tell you, goes with carry a new life inside of you and nourishing it before it's ready to be born, it can be a trying experience. Coupled with her anxiety that I myself have covered before on this channel, and it leads to some nights where it's hard for her to be able to get a decent sleep. Her channel has been able to amass a clear following of people who love her personality and her reactions, and are very loyal fans of hers. And you have probably noticed that me and her have had a clear amount of crossover of who watch both my videos and hers. Her channel has been helping her get ready for the big day and what comes after that. To lose that revenue and to have that looming over her head now, when she might be one of the ones that get targeted first by this shoot first and ask questions later approach, would be devastating, and she is wrestling with how to handle it. The boss system would definitely see her as the very first victim, as the example. And no, she is not changing her content, as I said, and I implore others not to do so. She is contemplating ending her YouTube channel as a direct result of what could be on the horizon. That would mean a loss of money that could be used to further prepare for a new arrival. There could be other stories like this, but this is the one I would hope she can tell herself, as I said, because to hear from her end would give it far more credence than I ever could. As for my channel, it will not change. I have clearly labeled my channels as PG to PG-13, and when I cover serious, mature subjects, shows, and games, I issue a warning beforehand, as you probably have noticed a warning that has been coming up on some of my videos before they start for about maybe a year now. This channel is not going to start changing its content just because some bureaucrat at the FTC that should have never been invited into the room decided that we needed to do so. I will not start randomly swearing to make sure a bot that will not be disillusioned anyway will be fooled, because what is stopping the bot from mislabeling anyway, which is entirely possible, and YouTube has stated that there will be no appeal process available if the bot got it wrong, which is another foolish oversight given how flawed we've seen these bots operate, YouTube must allow us some counteraction if something goes wrong. Given that the opposite can also happen if you do too much of that kind of change as well, when you get demonetized for being not family friendly enough, there's not much wiggle room anymore that can be had here. I cannot stress this enough that any content creator watching this right now, don't change their content for any reason. This is not a feasible solution and does nothing to change this problem and shows the signs of giving up. Don't close your YouTube channel, don't suddenly freak out, but also be aware that this is a serious situation and that they are making you the target. You are the people they're blaming for this, and you need to show defiance by continuing to do what you have done the way you've always done it. Don't change a thing. Changing it just shows them that they've won, and we have to show them that they are not going to win. So what can you do? Okay, for starters, YouTube's got to get on the ball here. They have to stop acting weird towards us and finally protecting us. Add the mixed option for our audiences. You know it exists. You can't hide it from us. We went looking for it. Stop scaring all of us. We already have the copyrights. We all have the demonetization, delisting, and now we have this to throw on the pile? You want the content creators to be the backbone, yet make it so hard for any of us to want to strengthen that backbone? Why throw yet another speed bump in our way and lazily make it so no nuance is even considered? Why is it that because you now have the support of things like YouTube TV and major sponsors that you have made us, the people that made YouTube, become as big as it is alongside you, an afterthought? You need us, not the other way around. And other platforms have begun to pop up that give us a choice, thank God, as to where to feature our videos. I've begun to put my videos on my Facebook Watch channel, and that has gained traction in recent months. And as I said, YouTube can make those ratings, the ones that they hide behind, the people who want to hide things behind the paywall, make them available for everybody, or create a brand new system that everybody can use. That would take down some of that tension, because everybody has a chance to not only rate whether or not something is appropriate for kids or for kids, but if something is appropriate for a particular age level and why it's rated like that. That would help out immensely for so many people on so many different levels, and why YouTube will not do this is beyond me. How will YouTube Premium fall into all of this? If a person has the YouTube Premium service and they go watch a demonetized video, the person that made that video will still get a cut of that profit. It does not affect those people. It does not affect those people who have the YouTube Premium subscription, because they are paying to not have to watch ads. Will that be the same thing for those that are listed as for kids through this YouTube algorithm? If someone who has a YouTube Premium subscription goes and watches something that YouTube is deemed to be for kids, will that matter in the whole idea of this whole change in profit that they would get in the personalized ads? Because they are paying to not have to watch the ads to begin with. So in that sense, that might negate any penalty that that person might have. Or maybe it wouldn't matter if a kid was watching it or not, if they were using YouTube proper or not, even if they were under 13, because the parent might have YouTube Premium anyway and not have to worry about the ads at all. I would love for YouTube to give the answers as to how YouTube fits into this whole puzzle, how this is going to factor into all this Coppa mess that YouTube has seemingly put us into here. But stop hiding things from us that would do so. And for God's sakes, just tell us the truth. And now that you have some guts, you were trying to do so when WTFU, Where's the Fair Use, came and became a thing. Why did that stop? Why is this stopping? For once in your careers, fight for us. Fight for the little guy. Why is that so hard? Now, the FTC, to their credit, has given people petition to sign to give your thoughts about Coppa, and to their credit, have tried to calm the waters and inform people that this is not going to be as bad as we think. So there is one particular person that we need to address, and we'll address it in here in a minute. You need to sign the petition, link below as well, and let them know about what you think in a civil matter, because we all know what happens when we don't say that. Some idiot or goofball or troll is going to make things so much harder for us. We can't let that happen. Do things in a civil matter. Tell the FTC about your feelings and the impact this is going to have. Because remember, even if the rules dictate you can't monetize your videos, at least yet, you're still going to be affected. If you use YouTube, you're going to be affected. Just because you can't monetize your videos doesn't mean YouTube can't run ads on those and run personalized ads. For what it's worth, you're still going to have to mark whether or not your stuff is made for kids. You are still subject to fines. So if you use YouTube, as I said, you are affected by this ruling, period. But whatever you do, please don't make this be a weapon against people you don't like. And yes, people in the Reset era have tried to use this as the scorched earth way in order to get rid of some channels they don't like. These don't help anyone, and those channels have just as much of a right to exist as those you do like. Remember, no one said you had to click the recommended videos tabs. And no one forced you to go down a proverbial rabbit hole. And there's no conspiracy theory of making you go down a path of right-wing talk or left-wing talk on YouTube. They have much of the right to be on a platform. Don't use this as a means to get rid of people you don't like. Don't make this be a wedge issue either, as I said. This affects everybody on all political backgrounds. I can prove that you can be progressive and still be against what's going on because I'm one of those people who is progressive and still hates what's going on. As I said before, an update to Coppa laws can happen because it's clear that this would have never happened in the first place if the Coppa laws were updated to show what it constitutes as parental consent being given to collect data. Yes, YouTube was pretty shady in how they handled all of this, and this is in no way excusing no culpability to what happened and how they are handling this now. But if they were smarter in how they worded what they bragged about, we would, instead of being scared stiff about what could happen in the new year, be talking about how broken the current Coppa laws obviously are, and how easy it is for someone to bypass a lot of it, how it doesn't really do anything to protect children from predatory actions, and how it can strip parents from the rights to make their own decisions. The only reason why people are saying, oh, no one under 13 should use the site is because the time it takes to know that consent was given takes way too long under the current laws, and digital fingerprint signatures would help out a ton. Why are these not addressed in Coppa? Why was this never examined? We could be having a much different discussion now had YouTube been smart and stood their ground. Because, believe it or not, even with all the bragging, even with all the stuff they did, if they had worded it right, they could have still won the damn case. However, there is one final thing I need to bring up. There is one thing that should be done on the FTC side. Tell Andrew Smith to either completely recluse himself or to step down from his position immediately. The FTC tried to calm the waters and give us some peace of mind. Smith, meanwhile, had such an act in the press conference as if he was the sheriff being told to tame a Wild West that he believes exists in his own mind. He's the one that made us all worry, and that was his intention. He had shown that he does not have the best interest of the American people, let alone children's privacy online, at heart. He has done this only because he knew he needed a good win to save face of whoever was lining his pocketbooks. And it was only when he was pushed by people who have just as little of an understanding of what is going on as he did that he decided to act. Who knows who else was in his ear at that point in time? When you have that many different companies that you're not allowed the name of to escape your lips because you have that much of a conflict of interest with all of those people, you clearly should have never been able to be in the same room as any government official. But as we have seen in the past few years, that seems to make you 10 times more qualified in some people's minds and eyes. He has shown that he is ready to shoot first, ask questions later, because in his mind, we're the bad guys. We might as well been the ones that were running YouTube at that time. And he has bragged about he's ready to shoot fish in a barrel. He wants to issue fines. He's making this into a witch hunt and doesn't believe that YouTube has higher ups at all. But here's what he doesn't understand. He thinks we're all just fish in a barrel. What he doesn't realize is what else can be stored in barrels. And don't take this the wrong way when I say this. If he shoots at the fish without thinking, he'll also aim at creators who are ready, willing, and able to fight back. And we all know another analogy that will fit with this, at least proverbially. If you play with fire, you're going to get burned. Andrew Smith, you are officially become an embarrassment to the office, and you must do the right thing. Resign. My name is JD Shadow, and that just happened.
The analogy that I think of, imperfect, is the expression about shooting fish in a barrel. And YouTube is the barrel, and the content creators are the fish.
But they're sharks with freaking laser beams on their heads, fish.